I've always said that the Blue Ridge Parkway feels different in late October. The colors are at their peak, the air tastes cold enough to sting your teeth, and the mornings carry that thick blue-tinted fog that settles in the tree line like something alive. I've hiked up near Craggy Gardens more times than I can count, enough that the trail feels familiar, almost comforting. That morning, I remember thinking it was going to be a perfect solo hike. Quiet, empty, just me and the mountain breathing in the cold. I didn't know I was about to ruin the one place that used to make me feel safe. I started around sunrise, when the sky was only beginning to turn gray. The fog was already heavy, thicker than usual. It hugged the ground and drifted between the trees in slow waves. My boots were damp within minutes from walking through it. The trail felt muffled, like sound couldn't escape. Even my own footsteps seemed swallowed. But I didn't mind. I liked the loneliness of it. That's probably why it took me so long to notice something was off. It started small, harmless even, just a faint rhythm behind me, a soft crunch of leaves that lined up almost perfectly with my own steps. I didn't think much of it. Deer move that way sometimes, pacing hikers at a distance. I figured it was that or maybe another person coming up behind me at a slow pace. But the longer I walked, the more it bothered me, because the steps didn't sound quite right. They were a fraction too slow, heavier, like someone was intentionally matching my gait but couldn't quite sync up perfectly. I kept going, pushing the thought away. I even slowed down once to tie my boot, pretending I wasn't listening for anything. But the moment I stopped moving, there it was, one extra step. Just one. A deliberate shift of weight against the leaf litter. Not the scurry of an animal. Not the rolling clatter of loose rock. A footstep. A human one. I straightened up and glanced around, trying to play it off like I wasn't rattled. But the fog made everything distorted. The trunks of trees stretched into tall, shadowy shapes, and the spaces between them looked too dark for the time of morning. I didn't see anyone. Didn't hear anything else. Still, something in me tightened. A feeling I couldn't shake. I kept walking. Slower this time. That extra step came again. After 20 minutes of this, my nerves were shot. I'd stop. There'd be one late step behind me. I'd start walking. The rhythm behind me would fall back into place like it had been waiting for me to continue. I finally forced myself to turn around and check the trail behind me. Nothing. Just mist. This endless gray-blue haze that made the world feel farther away than it was. But just before I turned back, I caught something at the corner of my eye. A shape. Dark. Tall. It slid behind a tree so quickly I thought maybe I imagined it. I walked backward for a few steps, staring into the space where it had been. Nothing moved. That's when the atmosphere changed. At first I didn't notice it consciously. It was like my body picked it up before my brain did. The air got heavier, quieter. I remember realizing I couldn't hear birds anymore. No rustling. No wind pushing through the branches. Nature had simply shut off. I reached the overlook, the wide clearing where you can usually see the mountains stretch out into forever, but the fog had smothered everything. I couldn't see 5 feet ahead. And just as I stepped onto the gravel, that sound came again behind me. Slow. Steady. Closer. I told myself it was another hiker. Someone messing with me, maybe. But the dread that sank into my stomach said otherwise. I don't know how to explain it except something in me understood that whatever was following me wasn't approaching out of curiosity. It wasn't deciding if I was a threat or food or anything normal. It felt like it was studying me, like it already knew me. I forced myself to turn around. I did it fast, trying to catch whoever or whatever it was before they could hide. But again there was no one. Just the fog, swirling a little as if disturbed by movement. And on the trail behind me was a single footprint. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't mine. I checked. Held my boot over it. The shape was wrong. Longer. Wider. The heel dug deeper, like someone much heavier had stepped there. And the strangest part, the leaves around it were still shifting a little, like they hadn't finished settling. I don't know what made me start walking. I should have run. But something told me not to. Not yet. I wanted to get off that overlook and back into the thicker woods where at least I wasn't exposed. But the moment I stepped back onto the trail, I heard it again. Another step. Closer than before. Too close. I picked up my pace. The steps behind me did the same. I didn't dare look back. Every instinct screamed not to. I kept my eyes forward and focused on the trail, on the way the mist thinned only slightly as the elevation dropped. I could feel something at my back, this presence pressing against the air, like heat from a fire without the warmth. Each time I rounded a turn, I told myself I'd lose it, that maybe it would stop following. But every time I slowed or hesitated, that soft crunch would answer me from behind. Always one beat late. Halfway down the trail, I heard breathing. Not loud, not animal-like, just breathing. Slow, controlled, too steady for someone scared or tired. It felt like whoever it was waiting for me to make a mistake, to trip, to stop, to acknowledge them. The trail finally leveled out where the forest grew denser, and for a moment the fog lifted enough for me to see a few yards ahead. I should have felt relief. But the woods were wrong. Empty. Even the colors seemed muted, like the mountain had pulled all the life inward to hide it from whatever was behind me. When I reached a narrow bend in the trail, something happened that broke whatever resolve I had left. I heard a branch snap, not behind me, but to my left. Something moving through the understory parallel to me. Then another step behind me, matching pace on two sides. And then, a low exhale behind my right shoulder, close enough that the hair on my arm lifted. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I didn't care that my boots slid on the wet leaves or that the rocks scraped against my ankles. I just ran. I didn't hear footsteps chasing me, but somehow that made it worse. It felt like I wasn't escaping anything, that maybe it was keeping pace without moving, that somehow the distance between us stayed the same no matter how fast I went. When I finally burst out into the small gravel lot where I'd parked, the fog thinned enough that the world felt real again. Solid. I didn't look back until I reached my car door. When I did, the trail mouth was empty. Completely still. But I swear on everything I know that I saw the fog shift, almost like someone ducked behind a tree the instant I turned. I drove home shaking. I didn't speak for hours. That night, when I walked down my hallway to get a glass of water, I heard it again. That soft, late-second step. One beat behind mine. I froze in place and listened. The house was silent. But when I stepped forward again, there it was. Faint. Careful. Always matching me. I don't hike alone anymore. And on some nights when the world is too quiet, I still hear that extra step following just behind me, waiting for me to look back. I never do. I've spent most of my adult life hiking the quieter stretches of the Blue Ridge Parkway, the ones most tourists don't bother with once the leaves fall and the air turns sharp. There's a certain peace in the off-season silence. No crowds, no distant engines humming along the overlooks. Just the mountain, the cold, and the steady rhythm of your own breath. I used to think that silence was comforting. I don't anymore. Not after what happened on the switchback above Graybeard Mountain, a memory that still makes the back of my neck go tight every time I think about being alone in the woods. It was early morning, late November. The fog was clinging low across the trail, rolling between the trees in slow sheets that made everything ahead of me look ghost-like and unreal. The leaves were damp and stuck to the ground in thick layers, and each step I took sounded too loud. I remember thinking how empty the forest felt, how I hadn't seen another car at the trailhead, how no birds were calling, how even the wind seemed too tired to push through the branches. I should have taken that as a sign and turned around. But I'd driven 2 hours to get up there, and stubbornness is a stupid kind of pride I wish I didn't have. About a mile in, the trail curved up toward a switchback that overlooked the valley. That's when I saw him, sitting at the bend above me right on the edge of the trail. At first I felt relieved. It's strange how just seeing another human shape in a place that usually feels deserted can lighten the air. I thought maybe he was a ranger checking the trail or a hiker who'd taken a rest. But as I got closer, something felt wrong. He wasn't sitting like someone at ease. He was rigid, straight-backed, shoulders stiff as if locked into position. He didn't shift when I approached, didn't turn, didn't even look like he was breathing. The fog curled around him, thickening as it rose higher up the incline, turning his outline into this dull, dark shape that didn't seem fully solid. I called out, just a casual morning, so I wouldn't startle him. He didn't react at all. Not a flinch. That's when the uneasy feeling started in my stomach, the kind that says something is wrong before you can explain why. I slowed down, watching him. His head was tilted slightly forward, like he was staring into the valley below, but the angle of his neck made him look off, unnatural. I was maybe 20 feet away when my boots slid in the mud. The sound cracked through the stillness like a gunshot. And that was the moment everything changed. Without turning, without shifting his weight or twisting his shoulders, the man spoke. "You shouldn't be here alone." The voice didn't come from him. It didn't. I don't care how strange that sounds. His body didn't move, not even the slight rise you'd expect from someone exhaling words. The voice came from somewhere deeper in the trees, from a direction that didn't match where his body sat. It echoed oddly, too, like it belonged to a space much larger than the woods around me. I stopped where I stood, every muscle going tight. He stood up then, but the movement was wrong. Jerky. Like someone pulling on unseen strings, forcing his limbs to straighten in segments instead of smoothly. His head didn't turn toward me. His shoulders didn't shift. He just rose to his feet and took a step toward the trail. But the sound of that step didn't come from him. It came from behind me. A sharp crack of a branch. Something shifting its weight. I whipped around, expecting to see another person, maybe someone messing with me. But the trail behind me was empty. Just gray fog and trees that suddenly felt far too close together. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, loud and deep enough that it muffled the forest. When I turned back to where the man had been standing on the switchback, he wasn't there. Not walking, not climbing, just gone. The fog was thicker now, clinging to the bend like it wanted to hide something. I don't know how long I stood frozen, breathing hard, trying to make sense of what I'd seen, or what I thought I'd seen. Every instinct I had was screaming to run, but my legs felt locked. It took hearing another snap, this time closer, too close, for me to finally move. I ran downhill, slipping on the wet leaves, nearly twisting my ankle on the uneven stones buried beneath them. My backpack smacked against my spine with every stride, but I didn't stop to adjust it. I didn't look back. I refused to. Something in me felt certain that whatever I'd seen or felt would be right behind me if I turned my head. When the trail finally flattened out, I dared to slow, gasping, trying to listen over the blood pounding in my ears. Nothing was behind me. Nothing was moving. For a moment, I let myself believe it was over. That maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Then I saw the tree. A single, wide poplar just off the trail. Its bark was smeared with mud, and pressed into that mud was a handprint. Long fingers, too long, spread wider than mine. It pointed down the path I had just come from, as if marking my route. The mud glistened wet and fresh, untouched by a speck of falling leaf litter. My throat closed. My chest tightened so hard I felt dizzy. I didn't wait to catch my breath. I ran the rest of the way out, half stumbling, half collapsing into the parking lot. My hands shook so bad I could barely turn my car key. Even when I finally made it onto the main road, I kept checking the rearview mirror, convinced I'd see someone walking the yellow line, following me. I didn't hike for a long time after that. And when I finally convinced myself to go back months later, different trail, broad daylight, I could almost pretend I'd imagined everything. Almost. Every now and then, when I'm alone in the woods and the air goes still the way it did that morning, I swear I hear something shift behind me. A single step. A soft snap of a branch. And sometimes, just sometimes, I get that feeling like someone is sitting just around the bend waiting for me to catch up. I don't look anymore. I don't want to see what shape is waiting. The rhododendron tunnel sits about 2 miles off one of the quieter stretches of the Blue Ridge Parkway, the kind of place you really only find if you've been hiking the area for years or if you wander off trail by accident. I'd passed through it a few times before, always during full daylight, when the green canopy overhead looks almost magical and the shadows seem soft and harmless. But the day this happened, I pushed my hike too late into the afternoon, and by the time I reached the entrance to that tunnel of twisting branches and dense leaves, the light was already bleeding out of the sky. The moment I stepped inside, the temperature dropped so quickly it felt like I'd walked into a different season. Cold, still, stale. The air carried this faint earthy smell, darker than regular forest soil, as if it had been turned recently, disturbed by something. The branches overhead interlocked so tightly they blocked out every bit of remaining daylight, so I had to let my eyes adjust to the dimness. That closed-in feeling hit me almost immediately. The tunnel always feels narrow, but that evening it felt suffocating, like the leaves were leaning in closer than usual, brushing my shoulders no matter how close I walked to the center. The strangest part was the sound. My breathing. It echoed somehow. Not loudly, just enough that I kept pausing, convinced someone behind me was inhaling at the same slow, tired rhythm I was. I'd turn, but the trail behind me was swallowed in shadow. Nothing but branches and silence. Halfway through, the whispering began. It was soft. So soft I thought at first it was the wind threading through the leaves. But there was no wind. The air was perfectly still. The voices were low and breathy, like someone speaking from inside cupped hands. Not words I could understand. Just murmurs, fragments, syllables that slid together like they belonged to a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I froze. The whispers stopped at the same instant, like whoever was talking knew I heard them. I stepped forward again, slowly, and the whispering resumed, just barely out of reach. If I quickened my pace, the rhythm of those voices quickened too. If I stopped abruptly, the silence snapped back like a rubber band. It felt deliberate, almost playful. Around the middle of the tunnel, where the branches sag the lowest and the dirt is soft and darker from years of fallen petals, I noticed something strange on the ground. Fresh drag marks. Long, uneven swaths in the soil as if something heavy had been pulled deeper off the trail. The marks disappeared beneath a curtain of thick rhododendron leaves. The realization sparked an immediate chill in my spine, the kind that locks your knees for a second. I crouched down, moving slowly, trying to peer past the tangled branches. The soil was darker there, disturbed recently. The leaves trembled, just slightly, as if something behind them shifted weight. No animal I know moves like that. Steady, patient, almost as though it didn't care that I was there. Then the whispering changed. It didn't come from deeper in the tunnel, or from behind me. It came from right beside my ear. A single voice. Close enough that I felt the warmth of breath that shouldn't have been possible in that cold air. Don't go out there. I swear every muscle in my body turned to ice. The voice wasn't threatening. It wasn't angry. It sounded like a warning, whispered in a tone that felt too human to be anything else. I jerked upright, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my teeth. The tunnel didn't feel dark anymore. It felt alive, like the branches were holding their breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. I ran. It didn't matter that the path twisted or that the low branches clipped my shoulders and arms as I shot forward. My only focus was the sliver of pale sky I knew waited at the end. But the tunnel felt longer than it ever had, like something behind me was stretching it out, pulling it the way you might pull fabric. Every few steps, I could hear the faint crunch of leaves behind me, a soft, measured step that never grew louder or softer, just steady, like something matching my pace without trying. When I finally burst out into open air, the cold hit me like a slap. The whispering stopped instantly, cut off mid-syllable. The forest outside felt too bright, too open despite the fading daylight. I stumbled forward, doubling over and gripping my knees while the hair on the back of my neck refused to lie flat. I didn't hear anything behind me at first, just my own ragged breaths. But as I backed down the trail, unable to stop glancing over my shoulder, I saw movement inside the tunnel. Not a person, not an animal, just the shifting shadows, the faintest suggestion of something pacing slowly along the inside of the rhododendron tunnel. Not approaching, not retreating, just waiting, following the line of the path as if the walls themselves carried the shape of whatever was inside. I hurried as fast as I could, trying not to break into a full sprint until the trail curved enough that the tunnel vanished from sight. Even then, I kept checking behind me, expecting to see someone step out from under those branches. But nothing came out. Nothing ever has. At least not when I'm watching. I avoided that section of the trail for months afterward. But once in a while, usually near dusk when the fog starts collecting in the low places, I'll think about that whisper. About what it meant. Don't go out there. Out where? Out of the tunnel, or out into the woods beyond it. Sometimes on quieter hikes, especially when the air goes still and my footsteps sound muffled, I swear I hear soft voices riding the edges of the breeze. And I can't help but wonder if whatever was whispering that day is still in there, pacing beneath those thick rhododendron branches, waiting for me to make the mistake of walking through alone again. I don't plan on giving it that chance. I used to think camping alone was the closest thing to freedom a person could feel. No noise from traffic, no people around to intrude on your thoughts, no lights bleeding the sky pale. Just the mountains, the cold dark, and whatever you brought with you to survive the night. I'd never had a bad experience before. I'd camped the Blue Ridge off-trail plenty of times, sometimes with friends, sometimes on my own. But that night above Mount Pisgah, God, I still feel it when I close my eyes. Like I never really left the ridge. Like something stayed with me. The day had been perfect. Cool air, late-season sunlight, a sky so clear it almost seemed artificial. I hiked a few miles past the established sites until the trail thinned and the ridge began its slow climb. I knew a little flat spot up there. Barely big enough for a tent, but the view was worth every step. Standing on that ridge always felt like standing on a balcony above the world. Forest rolling out in every direction, a sea of green rising and falling beneath that endless sky. I pitched my tent facing east to catch the sunrise, cooked a simple dinner on my little stove, and listened to the forest settle into evening. But the quiet felt heavier than usual. Not peaceful. More like the woods were waiting for something, and I wasn't sure I wanted to know what it was. I went to bed early, more out of unease than tiredness. I kept telling myself I'd feel better once I stopped fixating on the silence. But lying there listening to nothing made it worse. No owls. No insects. Just the occasional soft shift of air, the kind that never feels natural in the mountains. Around midnight, I gave up on sleep. The tent felt too small, too warm, too close. I crawled out just to stretch and check the treeline, more out of habit than fear. The moon was bright. One of those crisp bluish autumn nights where the light looks cold enough to touch. It washed the forest in a pale glaze, turning the trees into dark shapes leaning into each other. That's when I saw them. Two reflective eyes far up the ridge. Too bright. Too perfectly still. Watching me. At first, I told myself it was a deer. Deer freeze all the time when they see movement. I'd startled plenty on night hikes before. But the longer I looked, the more wrong the shape felt. There was no outline of a body behind the eyes. No soft shifting weight. No breath fog in the cold. Just those 2 points of light, separated wider than a deer's, locked in my direction like they were trying to understand me, or maybe waiting for me to understand them. I lifted my flashlight, sweeping the beam up the slope. The light didn't reach far enough, but the moment the beam moved even close to them, the eyes disappeared. Not blinked. Not turned. Just gone. My brain tried to rationalize it. Angle of reflection. Something stepped behind a tree. A trick of the moonlight. But none of those explanations made the feeling in my chest loosen at all. I kept scanning, hoping I'd see something else. A shape. A shadow. Any confirmation that it really had been an animal. But the ridge stayed empty. I backed into my tent and zipped it up as quietly as I could, like noise alone would invite something closer. I tried to lie down, but every position felt unsafe. The fabric shifted with every breeze, and each whisper of movement sent a shock through me. I kept imagining those eyes appearing right outside, pressed close enough to the nylon that I'd see the outline of something crouched low. Sometime after 2, the wind died completely. The air got so still I felt like I'd been buried. I don't know how long I lay there listening to nothing, but when the sound finally came, it felt louder than it should have. A soft scrape. Slow. Dragging around the curve of my tent. Then another. Then silence. My throat tightened so fast I thought I might choke on it. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The sound had come from the edge of the tent. Too close for me to pretend it was the wind or an animal passing by. The footsteps were spaced out, testing the ground, almost curious. The kind of sound a person makes when trying not to be heard. I eased a hand toward my backpack, fingers numb as I felt for my knife. I hated how loud the zipper sounded when I slid it open an inch at a time. I held the knife tight enough that my knuckles hurt. Then the eyes came back. I didn't see them through the tent fabric. I felt them first. A pressure in the dark. Like something had leaned close enough to hover right above me. I turned my head toward the tent door, and that faint bluish glow of the moon outside shifted, just barely. And there they were. Two wide, unblinking points of reflection, low to the ground. Too low for a deer. Too far apart for any predator I knew. They weren't moving. Just staring straight into the tent like the fabric wasn't even there. I don't know how long we stayed like that. It could have been seconds. It could have been minutes. But when the wind finally picked up again, breaking the stillness, the eyes slipped backward, melted almost into the dark. That was it for me. I didn't pack. I didn't take down the tent. I didn't even grab my stove. I shoved the knife into my pocket and burst out of the tent with every bit of energy I had left. Cold air hit my face as I ran downhill, sprinting through brush, stumbling over roots, branches slapping my arms and legs as I fought for the trail. My headlamp bounced wildly, lighting nothing long enough for me to process it. I didn't hear footsteps behind me. Nothing chased me, but the absence of sound was worse. It felt like whatever had been watching didn't need to run. Like it knew the woods better than I ever would. When I reached the main trail, I collapsed against a tree, gasping, looking back up the ridge. Empty. Calm. Beautiful even. Nothing in sight but moonlit treetops and the faint shadow of my tent far above, barely visible through the branches. But I swear, inside the dark line of the ridge between two trunks, I saw a tiny flickering gleam. Not bright enough to be eyes this time. More like something metallic catching the moonlight. As if something had tilted its head, or shifted its weight. I didn't wait to see more. I ran the rest of the way down and didn't stop until I reached my car. I sat there for what felt like an hour, hands shaking so badly I couldn't get the keys into the ignition. When I finally started the engine, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I couldn't bring myself to. 4 days afterward, the feeling stayed with me. A pressure between my shoulder blades, like I was being watched from a distance. Like those eyes were still out there, following from ridge to ridge. And even now, months later, sometimes on late hikes I'll catch a tiny glint far off in the trees. Too steady, too patient, too familiar. And every time I look away first. I don't know if that makes me smart or a coward. But I do know this. Whatever was on that ridge wasn't an animal. And whatever it was, it's still out there, waiting for me to make the mistake of camping alone again.